888. Now back to the program. Here's Dr. Pat Baccili.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the Dr. Pat Show. Truth be told, a memoir of success, suicide, and survival. It is a phenomenal book, but the story and the conversation is absolutely a call for epic change in the world of how we see mental illness, how we treat mental illness, and what we do to help the families of folks that are dealing with this. And honestly, Lucinda, thank you. Before we continue, I would love for you to give out your information, how people can get a copy of the book and find out about the work that you do.
Okay, well, the book, it's Truth Be Told, a memoir of success, suicide, and survival. And I'm Lucinda Bassett, obviously. And if you can go to Barnes & Noble and order it directly. And I believe they're offering a limited time discount. You can go into the store and get it. And also go to my website. My website's full of videos and some great information. And I'm offering a free webinar when you buy the book if you go to my website. I'm doing a webinar on the 16th, and you can get you can attend my free webinar, which is available when you purchase the book if you buy it through the web too. If you just go to my website. My website is lucindabassett-truthbetold.com, and you have to put the hyphen there.
Oh, or for those of you out there, if you want to just Google her, just go ahead and Google Lucinda Bassett, and you will be taken to a lot of information. We were talking before the break about a number of different things, and I said that this is really a call to action, and that there is a ripple effect that is happening in families all across this country. And the ripple effect, that I was talking about had to do with time after time after time after time of having something going on in your family, someone in your family being mentally ill, not well, and not much being done with it. And here we sit today, on the edge, and we don't even know the questions to ask. And I want to ask you, what are some of the most critical ahas that you've had along the way with your own personal experience, but even now out in the world telling the story?
Well, I think if you're talking specifically about someone that you love and what are some of the symptoms that we need to look for, is that what you're talking about, or do you
Yes.
want...
Okay. I think that's a great place to start.
All right. Well, I know, you know the people you know, and you know your children, you know your wife, your husband, your mother, your loved ones, your friends. So when you see a change in their behavior, and that happens. Everybody gets anxious. Everybody gets depressed. Everybody goes through periods of withdrawal or depression. That's normal, okay? What's not normal is when it continues. So, like for my husband, people say to me, well, didn't you know he was bipolar? Well, we knew his grandfather was. His grandfather, as I said, was hospitalized for 25 years, tried to take his life 5 times. When they finally put him on lithium at 70, he came home, believe it or not. His aunt did take her life. And so, first of all, if you have a history of suicide in your family, that's already a red flag, because there's not a gene for suicide, but they do believe it is genetic, and it's probably what's genetic is probably bipolar or clinical depression that's associated with, and often what's the word I'm looking for? It's a
pre-existing.
Before the suicide.
Yeah, predisposed.
Yeah, so if your family has a history of someone who's either attempted suicide or is bipolar, or there is suicide, that's a red flag. If the person that's in your life that you love suffers from clinical depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, 90% of the people that commit suicide have a mental illness. I think it's higher. I think it's everybody. I don't think any sane person is going to jump off a bridge or take a gun to their chest. And then what are the symptoms? Well, if someone that you know or love continues to be more and more withdrawn, if they go into a depression they can't get out of, if they become extremely antisocial, if they can't sleep, if they become agitated, if they have feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, if you see a change in their behavior and their personality in the way of obsessive worrying and anticipatory thinking about the future or what if thinking, if they become paranoid. My husband got to the point where he was always agitated. He was very, very paranoid. He thought there was a conspiracy and someone was trying to steal our business. You know, if they get to the point where you can tell they're getting their affairs in order. I mean, you know, then they're running around trying to take care of things just in case of something, like they might not be there. You know, extreme mood changes. Another big one is if they're not taking care of themselves physically. In other words, maybe they're not showering it that often. They're letting their hair get dirty. They're not changing their clothes. These are all symptoms that something is wrong. And then you take them to the doctor, and you could start with your family doctor, but you have to get into a psychiatrist, and you want to work with a psychiatrist who works with people who are suicidal. And if you start with your family physician, he will probably know someone who specifically works with that. You can call your mental health association. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. But, you know, that's not the best help, because really what you really need to do, and if they're saying I'm going to kill myself, if they are a danger to themselves or others, okay, you can take them to the hospital and you can get them put in a psych unit for 3 days. But what you might want to do if they're really seriously considering suicide is get a petition for guardianship. And this is something that it takes a little more effort, and you probably have to hire a lawyer for, and here we go again with money. And what that does is it gives you the right to treat this 30-year-old man like he's 15 again, and you have control over their health care, and you can really, you know, take control of their lives until they're stabilized. But I'm not going to lie to you. I should talk about honesty, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's a tough freaking path.
Yes,
you know,
it is.
I did everything I could, and you and I talked, and I can't remember if I said this on the air, but I don't think I did. I mean, I had my husband at the best psychiatrist in L.A., the one that we finally, and they kept passing him around like he was a science experiment. And finally, I sat in the office on a rainy Friday, and I said to his latest psychiatrist, he needs to be on lithium. He needs to be on lithium. It worked for his grandfather. They had him on other things. And he's like, what are you? Who do you think you are, Lucinda, a psychiatrist? And I said, no, I'm his wife, and I understand these medications, and what he's on is making him sick. And he said, David, do you know the side effects of lithium? I said, why don't you tell him the side effects of what he's taking right now, because It's making him worse. And then the guy leaned in and said, David, are you going to kill yourself? And he said, no way. And the next morning he went up into the mountains and shot himself. And by the way, let's talk about gun control. My husband was an avid gun collector and a marksman, and he understood how to operate guns. And I had his best friend come and take every gun out of the house. They were all locked up. Every single gun was taken out of our house. And how did he kill himself? With a gun. Where did it come from? I don't know, but he found it. And so much for gun control. And if there wouldn't have been a gun in this house, he would have gone and by the way, his first attempt was with medication. There are a lot of people that have guns in their homes that would never attempt suicide. And a lot of people who own guns hang themselves or jump in front of trains. It's not about the gun. It's about the person's mental health. And with the proper treatment, with early diagnosis, and then you being a strong advocate for your family member, there's a chance you can get them help. And because here's the really interesting statistic. These people can survive and they can be helped. Now it's very difficult to help someone who's schizophrenic, but if they stay on their medications, you know, and schizophrenics aren't the ones who are killing themselves. It's typically bipolar and clinically depressed people.
That's right. I think this is a really good point to make here. You know, you should say this again, Lucinda, because what's happening is, you know, our pop culture and television are sensationalizing the whole schizophrenic, psychopathic thing and lumping all those together. But you're right. That's not where the suicides are happening. No,
and here's the thing. You know, untreated depression is the number one cause for suicide. That's fact. And when we talk about untreated depression, we're talking about depression and also bipolar disorder. And the thing is, those are the leading causes of suicide. Schizophrenia sure is a mental illness, and there are schizophrenics who commit suicide. But the interesting thing about schizophrenia is that many times schizophrenics can live their whole life on medications and can be somewhat functional, okay? They can live in assisted living, and there are different ways a schizophrenic can live their life. But the people that kill themselves are typically people who suffer from various types of depression. So if you can treat depression and bipolar, let's talk about that for a minute, because bipolar disorder is a very different type of it's mania and depression.